Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. My name's Chris Coghill, and today we're going to be talking about skills, attitudes, and culture, preparing for the AI revolution. I'll be producing this webinar for you, and before we begin, I want to just go through a couple of housekeeping items, just so everyone's up to speed and that everyone has a chance to join in. We'll be recording this session today, and a member of your local office will reach out to you tomorrow with the recording, as well as a white paper that covers a lot of this topic and has a lot of statistics and more detailed findings, as well as a few different resources to help you better understand artificial intelligence, and more specifically, how to prepare your team or organization for this new technology transformation that's underway. So artificial intelligence has really been grabbing the headlines over the past year. It's been something that we've sort of heard about, but in the past couple of months, it's really started to hit pretty much everything that we do. And in those headlines that we see, you hear things about these great productivity gains, how artificial intelligence is going to take over all of these different tasks and different activities that we perform, both at work and at home. In addition, there's some serious ethical questions, as well as, is this information always correct? But the one thing that you don't always hear about is how leaders and managers within organizations are going to prepare their teams for success. We know that the workplace is going to be undergoing a massive transformation, but what are the skills, attitudes, and culture that are needed to really make sure that our teams adopt the technology, adapt their normal activities, and that organizations are able to really drive and make the most of this technology? So joining me today is Dale Carnegie's President and CEO, Joe Hart.
Thank you, Chris. It's great to be with you. Great to be with everyone today. And as Chris had said, we are really at a very, very important time in the world. AI is something that is not only dominating headlines, but really starting even more to have an impact in our day-to-day lives and our work and so forth. And, my hope with this talk is to really give everyone who's here, we're going to cover a lot of information, but I'll do it as hopefully interactively and interestingly as possible. But the goal is to give you some real takeaways, both individually. How do you prepare for this to succeed in your organization? And if you're a leader, especially, how do you prepare your organization? Because there will be winners and not winners that will come out of how organizations deploy AI. So let's just start with a very quick poll and a question. We're just asking about you. How familiar are you with artificial intelligence? You could say, hey, look, I'm really familiar with it. I'm using this a lot. I use it frequently. So if you're actively using it, you can click on that in the chat. You could say I'm somewhat familiar with that, but I'm not actively using it. Or you could say, you know what? We're still kind of assessing, where to begin. So where is your organization rolling out artificial intelligence today? So go ahead and click on the answer that is right for you.
Yeah, so we have the poll. It's feverishly collecting information, and we have a significant amount of people who have contributed. So I'm actually going to end the poll and share the results. And you can see that a significant portion of people, in fact, the majority, are still in the assessment mode. They're still trying to figure out what is all of this and where do we begin. Some are in testing, and then a very few are actually actively using the technology. So it seems like it's the perfect time to be learning and preparing people and thinking about what we can do to really get the workforce ready for this new technology.
That's right, Chris. And really that's where we're going to go next. And let me just offer too a little bit about Dale Carnegie for those of you who may or may not be familiar with us. We're a global organization, primarily in the training space. We've got 200 operations in 86 countries. So the perspective that I'm going to share is a global perspective. I will highlight North America, U.S., Canada in particular. But we're looking at not just one market, we're looking all over the world with the research I'm going to share with you today. So, and also level set, because sometimes, even we hear a term like AI, it means a lot of different things to different people. The way we're using that in this webinar is that the ability of a machine or a system to sense, comprehend, act, learn like a human being. And, when we asked in our, actually, this is from PwC, PwC asked about, how frequently people are seeing AI. 42% said their company is already using some form of AI. 35% said they believe the plans are in the work. I would actually think that these numbers probably are higher because part of what we're seeing is that AI is embedded into a lot of other systems. And whether it's partner systems or now Microsoft or SAP and that type of thing, but these numbers are clearly increasing. And part also of what we're seeing is that the use of AI has doubled. This is a McKinsey survey looking at 18 to 22, just the number of organizations using, how many instances of AI, in their organization. So we would expect that this is going to start to increase exponentially moving forward. So, as I mentioned, Dale Carnegie is a training organization, so we're experts on people. We're not technical AI experts, but part of what we are looking at, how do we implement change? And, when we think about ChatGPT, so much of what we know and all of us being familiar, has happened even over the last year. But this is absolutely incredible to me. ChatGPT came out in November of 22, and you can see this, and this information is from OpenAI. Who created ChatGPT. But you can look at these greenish kind of bubbles that will look at proficiency in various areas, verbal, uniform bar exam. So when this came out, 10% in the uniform bar exam, 40 percentile in the LSAT. But by March 14th, when ChatGPT 4 came out, you could see just these incredible improvements in this technology. So even today, in areas that are low, we expect to see continued improvement in this. There's ChatGPT 5, which may come out as early, even potentially as this month, but it will certainly be out, at least it's forecast for the first quarter of next year. But this is part of why this has captured our attention. And we look at the time to reach 100 million users, other types of applications versus ChatGPT, 2 months to get to 100 million users. So this is here. This is not a shiny object. This is something that is transformative. And then the question is, how do we really get ready for it? So AI has the potential, clearly, to accelerate role changes, redesign work, potentially cause displacement. We'll talk about that. But this is really where a lot of where we want to focus is, what are the skills that you or I need to have in order for us to succeed in this new era? Because this is something that's going to continue to unfold over the years ahead. This is not a perfect system. There's certainly, we have all experienced issues around perhaps accuracy. There are concerns about bias and fairness and privacy and so forth. So those need to be addressed. But again, what is the role of the person in all this? What is the role of, what are the skills that I need to be successful? How am I going to interact with my manager? If I'm a manager or a leader, how do I encourage people to be supportive of this new technology so we can take advantage of that? So today, when we look at, where are the strengths and the weaknesses, so to speak, between the technology and the people, if we look on the x-axis and we say this is creative intelligence, the y-axis, this is social intelligence, The area where people have the advantage is where there's a higher level of social and creative intelligence needed versus today's systems. Now, this may change, and I expect it would change over time, but these lower level functions are the ones where technology clearly has the advantage. So where, as human beings, can we succeed and thrive and drive the greatest amount of value? It really is around these people skills, developing people, leading people, inspiring, communicating, appreciating, the kinds of things that go to human interaction. Now, in our Dale Carnegie survey, we asked first, VPs and above, what are the skills that you feel like be the most important for your teams to have in an era of AI? And what they said is, hey, communication skills, absolutely critical. People are going to have to interact with each other very effectively, creativity, critical thinking, etc. We then asked really all users, about 3,600 people in total in this survey, how frequently have you gotten trained in these areas? So what we can see are gaps. We have gaps in areas of proficiency and training, communication, creativity, critical thinking. So on the one hand, we've got this dichotomy, right? We've got, hey, these are going to be really important. And then we've got, here's where we've actually trained our people. So these may be opportunities in the future. So we talk at Dale Carnegie about AI is powered by people. It is a technology that is dependent on data. It's only as good as the data that it has access to. Whereas people, where do we get our strengths, our insights? It's our experience, our imagination, our feelings, our judgment, in all these other areas. So to complement these two things, really to create greater success in the organization. Now, the research that we have done at Dale Carnegie, first of all, as I mentioned, it's global. We've looked at 11 countries, about 3,600 people. We've looked at all levels within an organization. So part of what forms what I'm going to share with you moving forward, and the insights come from our global AI research. We also have conducted over many years research in agility and change management, which are going to be critical, really, because this is ultimately a change management exercise, creativity, culture, et cetera. And we can have through our franchise network, we can certainly get you access to any of the research that you might like. There are other firms doing phenomenal work in this area and research. So we want to draw upon all of those in bringing you the insights that I'm going to share with you today. So starting with the Dale Carnegie survey, we asked people, hey, do you agree, disagree that AI will fundamentally change the way that we work and live in 10 years? Not surprisingly, 82% said, I somewhat or strongly agree, yes, it will. 68% believe that their own job will be impacted within the next 5 years. Now, that doesn't mean eliminated, but it's impacted. So it's called 70% say, hey, look, my job is impacted. Now, again, if we're leaders thinking about our teams, what that means is we may have people who could be worried, or they could be people who are looking for, hey, what's the opportunity here for me to become more effective and more productive in my role? We asked people, hey, how concerned are you about your job being eliminated? Actually, you've got a good number of people who are slightly or at least moderately concerned about that, called 65%, 35%. They're not worried at all, but a good portion of people are. So on the one hand, we've got people who said, look, I'm expecting an impact. Many people are concerned that it could eliminate my job. Others, on the other hand, are positive about AI. They say, well, this could help me focus on more meaningful work. 71% in the US, 70% from a global perspective, pretty comparable. So we've got this balance. People aren't sure. There is optimism, there's concern. So ultimately, this creates a role for leaders to act. And going back to this point of 82% of respondents, feel that AI can make their job better. Let me just give an example of one area where we're seeing this certainly as a potential is salespeople. If you have salespeople, one of the most tedious parts about being a salesperson is documenting call meetings, thinking about next steps, working on proposals. There are AI-based systems right now that are designed to be able to summarize a meeting. These are the key points. Actually create and compose a follow-up communication, generate a proposal in a fraction of the time. So if I'm a salesperson, I'm saying, gosh, if I could create 20% more time to spend with my customer, that's better for the customer, that's better, hopefully, for the business. I could sell more. So there are people who are looking for enhancement in their job performance, enhancement in their job satisfaction. The question then, though, because we know people are resistant to something, it's a completely different situation than if they're excited about it. So how do we cultivate kind of a positive mindset toward AI? And what people in our survey told us is that there are three things. If you want me to be positive, excited, open, ready to support, ready to go, one is transparency. 76% said, I need a clear understanding of what we're doing. Okay, this goes from how does this fit? Communicate with me. I want to make sure I understand. The second thing, 70% said, I need to trust my organization's leadership. If I have trust and if I understand and you're being open with me, I certainly feel much better. I feel good. I'm more optimistic. But there's a third piece. And this goes to just think about you right now or me. What do we think about? We think about us. How does this affect me? So ultimately, do I have the skills? Is my organization investing in me to make sure that I've got the skills to adapt in this world moving forward? So those are three things that need to be present. What happens when they're not present? And there's a story, I won't reveal the name of the company, but it was an airline that had wanted to deploy an AI-based system with customer service agents. And in order to do that, they needed the customer service agents to really explain what they do in their jobs, the kind of questions they get, and that type of thing. Rather than being transparent, the organization said, hey, well, we're just trying to understand your job. They really didn't talk about AI. They were not looking to displace these people. They were looking really to enhance their roles, but they were afraid. They were afraid if we're transparent about bringing in this system, people may worry, they may quit, they may leave. So they didn't say anything. Well, how do you think people felt when in the middle of that project, word got out about what the real nature of that project was? Trust was broken. And the company had to go through an enormous effort to repair that trust, to really even save the project and make it successful. So, if we want our teams to embrace AI, part of what we need to do is to create trust. One of the things we asked in our survey was, hey, how much do you trust your leaders, your current leaders right now, to make the right decisions about implementing AI? What we found was the higher one is in an organization, the more likely they are to trust leadership in making the right decisions. So in other words, if I'm a leader, yes, I'm going to trust myself to make a good decision. But if I'm an individual contributor, only 26% said, yes, I believe my leadership will do the right thing. That's a problem. So how can leadership ultimately encourage people so that those numbers are higher? Now, the first thing I mentioned goes to communication. And this is actually something that came out of COVID. MIT had done research. They wanted to look at the most effective companies at developing higher engagement scores during COVID. And what they found is that they looked at the top 50 and then the lowest 50. The top 50 were highly effective at communication. And we're going to talk in a moment about, okay, so what does that mean? How do I communicate? What are some strategies? We'll kind of offer some thoughts on that. The second part of this, though, goes to transparency. Just transparency as a concept. Are my leaders being open and authentic with me? Are they telling me the truth? And, sometimes as leaders, we can't say everything, but we should be able to tell people as much as we can We owe it to people to be as transparent as possible. When we do that, we build trust. We can see that the strongest organizations were very good at that. And then the last part of this was clarity of strategy. The most successful organizations during COVID and engagement were very good in terms of articulating their strategy. So with communication, many people will say, well, gosh, I communicate all the time. But this is a great quote, right? The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that's taken place. I mean, I sent the email or I told someone something, so therefore I've communicated, but communication is two-way. So we want our teams to be successful. We want to be successful. Implementing AI in our organizations, how do we do that? Here's some thoughts about how to communicate effectively. And again, if we think about Dale Carnegie, our franchise teams around the world, part of where we really have led for 111 years is effective communication. So first of all, who is my audience? Why am I communicating in the first place? And to whom am I communicating? What is my message? What is that message? And what's the length, the language, the words, the tone? We wrote role of ChatGPT, by the way. I consider myself a heavy user of ChatGPT. It's incredible, some things it can do. It can write communications in your own voice, your own tone. You can train it to do that. But there might be some opportunity even to leverage technology in the messages we're sending to our teams. Mode, how do we communicate? Is it just through email? I sent the email. Is it Teams? Is it videos? Is it town hall meetings? Is it a combination of those? But we want to think about how we're reaching people. The frequency, this is a little bit of the Goldilocks. Is it too little? Is it too much? Is it just right? So, and who is doing the communicating? Is it varied by team or whatnot? Transparency, which goes to how much you can share. And again, we've got confidentiality with openness. We need to balance that. And then the last part is validation. Is the message received? If we ask people, hey, what did you take away from that communication you got the other day? How are you feeling about what we're doing around AI? How confident are you in your role moving forward? We should ask questions to make sure that people understand and they support what we're doing. We talk about people support a world they help create. So communication is a critical part in building trust. Another part in building trust is around our external reliability and our internal reliability. So external reliability means, look, I'm honest. I do the same things that I say that I'm going to do. Internal reliability means that I am someone who lives to the core values that I espouse. I'm not saying one thing and then, people say, that's not really Joe. He's just acting a certain way. Now, Portia Mount is someone I interviewed on the Dale Carnegie Take Command podcast. And part of it, she's written a book called Kick Some Glass, which is about women who've broken through the glass ceiling. And part of what she found in this was that the most successful female leaders who broke the glass ceiling talked about the importance of being true to their values, not trying to be someone that they weren't. They knew their values, they lived by those values, and this is a central idea, authentic, reliable leadership in terms of how we're communicating to our teams. So how do we do that? I've already talked about communication. Empathy, Dale Carnegie's principle number 17. Try honestly to see things from another person's point of view. There's a great quote that people don't care what you know if they don't know that you care. So to take time and to try to see things from another person's point of view demonstrates a level of respect that is really important in building trust. I'm not going to go through all of these. I want to make sure we've got plenty of time for Q&A, but being a good listener, being consistent, and ultimately working to create positive relationships. There's a whole other program that we have around taking command. Taking command means, how do I be intentional in the quality of the relationships that I'm building? And there's strategies. We'd be happy to give those to you, share those with you. You just feel free to ask our franchise teams, and we'd be willing to do that. Okay, so preparing the organization for AI's workplace transformation. There's three things that we're going to focus on. Okay, one is around agility. Agility is that ability to move quickly, to change, to take risk. Resilience, how do I, gosh, something horrible happens, right? Faced in adversity, or in my mind, I create an adversity. I say, oh my gosh, this AI thing, is this really horrible? Well, how do you create resilience so that our team can get through with courage any situation? So I can get through any situation with courage. And then the last part of this is developing our own emotional intelligence. What are some strategies for me or for our teams to become more emotionally intelligent? So people support a world they help create is something that we talk about frequently in Dale Carnegie. We want to involve people in that process. We can build trust around AI by engaging people in the conversations around AI. And when we do that, the benefit is, they're more willing to adapt, to change routines. But if I simply say, do this, without explaining the why to do this, or the how it's going to benefit you, or even if I'm at a point where we're trying to figure out what systems we want to implement, we might involve the teams. At Dale Carnegie right now, we are actively testing a lot of different things, and our teams have it as individual KRAs, key result areas, to really work on that. So they're engaged themselves in recommending and giving solutions. Agility is an organization's ability to gather and act on information, to make decisions quickly, and then to implement change. And what happens when people are afraid? If they're afraid to take risk, can they make decisions quickly? Are they willing to implement change? Or are they more just kind of frozen in fear or in paralysis? The way that an organization can be more agile, and we'll look at a couple of examples, some very agile organizations. This is the model from our our agility research around how to do that. One is organizational purpose. And let me first talk about that, and then I'll come back to some of these other things. Organizational purpose. Some of the best organizations can simplify and create and articulate their why to their teams very, very effectively. And people, I think about Tesla. I just finished reading the Elon Musk book. Fantastic, insightful book, by the way. Learned a lot of interesting things about him. But it's not even about building cars. It's not about building solar panels. It's about accelerating the planet's transition to sustainable energy. When people galvanize around a single idea, that can unlock the ability to take risks. Now, there's some other things that need to be there too. But I think about, and there's a great example with Amazon. You imagine, and this happened, right? There's early in the days of Amazon, small project meeting. Jeff Bezos is in the meeting, a handful of other people, and they're sitting there talking about how can we really take things to the next level. Their clear, compelling purpose is to be Earth's most consumer-centric company. Customers can find and discover anything they want, might want to buy online. Some junior engineer at one point said, I have an idea. What if we could offer free, overnight or 2-day shipping? You can imagine kind of the reaction. People are like, what? But they said, let's model that. They were open to it. They had an environment where they were supportive. But they started with the purpose. And we all know what happened. I mean, Amazon Prime has been a game changer for that company. Part of it was the environment. Part of it was the compelling purpose. So for us, on this Zoom right now, can we ask ourselves, are we clear about our organization's compelling purpose? If we're leaders, how do we communicate that purpose? How do we activate people around that purpose? Because that's really an important part of first agility. And that also goes to then, well, how are we going to deploy AI? All the different tools that we can deploy, where are we going to start? And why those? And if we start with our compelling purpose, then we've got a reason, we've got a focus. The second part of the agility model is then around resilience emotional and social intelligence, and then AI tools and processes. When we have all of these things together, then we've got the capacity to act, and then we have an agile organization, a more competitive organization that can win in the marketplace. So resilience is clearly a critical part of this. This is the ability to bounce back from adversity. And, this chart demonstrates 4 different responses to an adverse situation. The top line is a chronic response. Okay, so imagine something you perceive as bad happens, and we are immediately, oh my gosh, dysfunctional. We're paralyzed, and that continues over a period of time. X-axis here is time, and then Y-axis is how we respond. Now, the second one, this yellow one, is recovered, right? This basically says, okay, I might be immobilized at first, but then I respond, I know how to handle it, and I recover. That's good. The third one is delayed. This is not where we want to be. We might be okay in our initial response, but over time, the sky is falling. Oh my gosh, this is hopeless. And we get to the same point where we are dysfunctional. Where we want to be, and we can talk about how in a moment, is we want to be individually resilient. Why is it we have 2 people in the same situation, same set of facts? One person is courageous, confident, thriving. The other person, paralyzed, fearful, insecure. We don't want to be that person. We don't want our teams to be that person. So we need to be and develop that resilience. From our research, our Dale Carnegie research, 2 factors that we found that really drove the highest levels of resilience. One is positive mindset. Those people who were highly resilient were 71% were more likely to have a positive mindset. And just to be clear, look, bad things happen. And this is not rose-colored glasses. This is saying, look, I'm going to have a mindset that says, I'm going to find a solution. I'm going to work through this. I need to find an answer. When we have that kind of a mindset, we're more likely to get that result. The second thing is confidence. I'm confident in my skill and my ability to do something. And those people who were resilient were twice as likely as others. People who had that confidence were twice as likely to be resilient, highly resilient. So these are things that we can work on over time. We can develop a positive mindset, condition our minds for success, focus on confidence, and become stronger, more effective leaders. Ultimately, you think about Dale Carnegie, this incredibly brilliant, successful person who said that the most valuable thing he ever learned in his entire life is the importance of how we think, right? If I know how you think, I know who you are. Our attitude is the X factor that determines our fate. He quotes Marcus Aurelius, our lives are what our thoughts make it. So practicing, choosing the right thoughts, conditioning our minds for success, and helping other people do that is critical. So if we want to be successful, we've got this change management initiative around AI. How do we develop resilience for ourselves first, and then also with our teams? And again, these are things that we focus on in Dale Carnegie courses and programs, but a few tips or strategies, if you will. One, living in daytight compartments. Imagine you have a submarine. It's airtight on the inside. You close one door, you close the other door, water's not going to get in. You and I have 24 hours. You've got a beginning of the day, we've got an end of the day. And within that period of time, what if we are focusing constructively on the things that we can do? Doesn't mean I'm not going to think about tomorrow or the next week or the report I have to write or how I'm going to present. I'm going to do that, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to prepare for it. I'm not going to worry about it. I might ask myself, what is the worst that can possibly happen? How many times have you or I worried about something horrible that never happened? But when we accept the worst and start to build back, we can ultimately realize we can bring our stress level down and put ourselves in a position to act. And then fill your mind with thoughts of peace, courage, health, and hope. You and I have accomplished so much in our lives that is good that sometimes we can forget. Sometimes we can be vicious to ourselves, the things that we say. We need to remind ourselves and sometimes look back. There's only one thing that you take away from this webinar. I hope that it would be to make sure that we are recognizing and acknowledging the strengths that we have as we think about where we are and the things that we can do, because we're far more competent often than we are confident. The second part of this then is modeling these values for our teams. You can't give what you don't have. If I want to have a resilient team, I need to demonstrate resilience. I need to demonstrate and model the right mindset and to encourage and appreciate and listen and value other people to build their confidence and to correct people in a respectful way. Clearly, we have to get results, but we can do that in a way that dignifies the person. So the other thing I want to talk about here is psychological safety. You go back to Amazon, imagine that meeting where someone said, that's a stupid idea, that'll never work, just get out of here. That kills creativity. And the same thing is true as we think about how we're going to deploy AI in our organizations to drive productivity, new products, and a whole range of other things. We want an environment where people feel open and safe sharing their thoughts and their ideas. Are they afraid that they're going to be seen in a negative light if they give an idea and someone says, that's a bad idea? We don't want to do that. The model I've looked at in terms of probably one of the most successful people in creating psychological safety was Alan Mulally, the former CEO of Boeing and Ford. When he came to Ford in 2006, it was a company that was getting ready to go out of business. He turned it around. It was a toxic culture, people undermining each other. He said, look, we're going to work together. We are going to have transparent information. He created a system where every key metric was looked at red, yellow, green. And he created an environment where, if you had a red, that was, that's a good thing in the sense that we are creating transparency and we can come together and work around that. So psychological safety clearly is a critical part of an arrow in our quiver around AI. So some tips and strategies for this. How we communicate. Never show respect for another person's opinion. Never say you're wrong. Doesn't mean we're not going to correct someone or offer a different point of view, but the way that we say that is we're going to respect. Hey, I appreciate your thought. Tell me more about why you think that. There might be a different way to look at that, but the way we do it, we're not going to say you're wrong. That's stupid. If I'm wrong, I'm going to admit that. I need to do that. I'm going to try not to embarrass people. I might call attention to people's mistakes indirectly, showing appreciation. Here's another thing. If there's only one thing, think about this. What is one person in your life today, right now? Could be at work, could be a significant other, could be someone in the community, could be a customer, but where that relationship requires appreciation. What if we appreciate people honestly and sincerely? What happens? We can build a relationship, we can build trust. Got to be honest and sincere. But when we do that, we can really build a strong relationship. But letting the other person save face, that just fundamentally goes to our respect for other people. So the last thing here just to talk about is emotional intelligence. This is the ability to deal with the challenging social situations, understanding people's concerns. A lot of the things we've said kind of roll up to emotional intelligence. And when we're talking about systems, we're talking about AI, listen, there are some challenges here that only we as people can correct. And when we have the right level of emotional intelligence in terms of how we communicate with each other, how we present information, how we share with information, we can be much more successful. AI is often inaccurate. I've experienced this myself. I was giving a presentation and I was looking for some research around diversity and creativity, and it gave me a study, which is a Harvard Business Review study. And I said, I said, what is the reference for this? And ultimately, it was made up. It was meant to be representative of different things that were out there. We got to be careful about how we leverage this technology. Bias. AI is only as good as the data that goes into it. AI can be biased. That's a potential issue. So we as people need to be aware of that in terms of how we're using it, how we're sharing it, and how we're presenting it. And then, of course, there are ethical issues not just around IP, but also I think in the months and the years ahead, it's going to become very interesting in terms of deep fakes and other kinds of things. So how we respond to this, how much authority we give to AI in our organizations, so the use of these technologies will be very, very important. So what are some strategies then? All those bring all of these things kind of home, if you will, and then we're going to have the balance of the time for Q&A. One is, I think we all can acknowledge that change is coming, or it's already here. So how do we take stock of our own organizations, of our people? Let's recognize that, again, AI is something that will be used by people, implemented and integrated into systems that we will use in our organizations. So we want to make sure people are receptive, that they're optimistic, that they are prepared. So that means then, do our leaders have the right skills to build trust? Do we have a strategy around how to communicate effectively? Are we being transparent? Are we teaching other people about adversity and how to overcome adversity and be resilient and be agile? Do we have the skills to elevate the organization so we can compete effectively in this new era? Advocating for transparency, open lines of communication, keep communicating over a period of time, having an effective strategy and being mindful of our audience, about the message, about the mode, about the two-way dialogue, all of are critical. Lay the foundation for success with the training strategy. So does the team know that you or I in our organizations have their back? We want to invest. We want to help people be the best they can be. What's leadership? Leadership is about helping people unlock their talents so that the organization can achieve better results than they otherwise would have. So this means then having a strategy that looks at where people are, what are the gaps, and how do we make sure that we're ready for that next level. And then again, staying attentive to trust, because sometimes trust may not be talked about. It's a very, very hard thing to gain and a very, very easy thing to lose. So as leaders, we definitely need to be mindful about building and maintaining that trust. With the right strategies and the right skills, people can do amazing things. In North America, and this is all countries, and also in USA and Canada, we look at where people are expecting these skills, these training skills to come from. In both the world and the US, and maybe more in the US, 74% are expecting it to come from their companies. So this is an opportunity to build relationship, build trust, help the company grow by providing the right training to people that they're expecting to come from the organization anyway. And then, one of the other things here is, can AI enhance culture? Respondents who trust their leaders, I've got trust in my leader. If I understand AI and I've received some training in it, 70% say, hey, yes, this is something we can actually use this in these technologies to make our culture better, to make our teams better, to focus on eliminating some of the mundane, routine things that we've had to do, and to focus on developing and operating at the higher levels of creative and social intelligence. But where people don't trust their leaders, where they don't understand AI, they haven't had good communication, they haven't had training, only 21% are even optimistic about AI enhancing culture. So preparing your organization for AI, we've talked about trust and transparency, organizational agility and resilience, psychological safety, and also ultimately emotional intelligence. But the future really is ours. If we do the right things as leaders, we can unlock the power of technology to transform our organizations and help us compete and win in the marketplace. And honestly, this is one of the most critical times, maybe in our lives, in terms of the dynamic change in the world, in the business. If we're not successful, as I said, there's going to be winners and there will be not winners. So now is the opportunity for us to demonstrate our leadership individually and collectively to take our organizations to that next level. So Dale Carnegie said, keep your mind open to change, welcome it, court it, and it's only by examining our opinions and ideas that we can progress. And so let's keep that in mind as we move forward. And then finally, just if you would like, we do have research, white papers, podcasts, all kinds of things at dalecarnegie.com. So you can scan on this QR code. There's also the white paper that Chris had mentioned, which all of you will be getting as a courtesy from us together with the recording. If you'd like to follow me, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and Twitter. It's at Joseph K. Hart. You can just send me a note, and I would love to be connected to you as well. And Chris, I think we've got some time for Q&A. So I'll turn it over to you, and let's do it.
Great. So just as a reminder, if you have any questions, we're going to be happy to answer them. Just use the Q&A box. And as you were presenting, Joe, there were a couple of questions. Rachel had a question related to the slide that you presented where you listed out all of the different soft skills and what leaders felt would be important going forward. She had a concern about that empathy was the lowest of those. So can you talk about, even though that was rated low, talk about the importance of empathy as it relates to leadership and change?
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the question, Rachel. And I found that exact same thing interesting myself, because empathy may be the single most important leadership trait, because ultimately, if we want to build connection with people and trust with people, and truly a strong relationship, we have to have respect. We have to have that ability to look at, and again, it doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to do something, everything that someone wants, but I'm going to try to put myself in your shoes. I'm going to try to understand where you're coming from. So a lot of other leadership skills are based on that understanding, that relationship. So if that is not there, then some of the other skills, which are critically important, communication is critically important. But how am I communicating? Am I communicating from a place of empathy and understanding the person in my audience, or am I just communicating based on what I think? And I will be far more effective if I am thinking about the other person, which is something that Dale Carnegie always talked about. Think about our audience. So I really appreciate the question, and I would think that that's a critical area that we all need to continue to sharpen, so to speak.
We have another question from Silas, and this one, I guess I'll pose to you as a user of AI. Is there anything we shouldn't use AI for, such as asking about facts? Are there other pitfalls that maybe you've experienced that we should watch out for?
The number one thing I've noticed is that the quality of the responses I get are directly connected to how I interact with the AI. So it's the proverbial garbage in, garbage out. I will often write very, very long prompts and be very clear about what I'm looking for. And then when I get it, if it's not exactly what I'm looking for, I did this the other day. I had a communication, and I had been given a draft communication that was voluminous. Somebody else had written it. It wasn't bad. It was just long. So I put it in ChatGPT. I said, "Hey, can you help me, shorten this? And when I'm here's the audience, and here's what I'm trying to do. And would you please, and my initial thing was, hey, shorten it." And it came back, and it was still long. And I said, "Well, I'd like this to be written at let's call it at a 12th grade level, and it shouldn't take more than 90 seconds to read." So then I got something different, and that was better, but that was too short. Then I said, well, what about this? So I do think that the way that we interact with AI is important. There are a lot of tools out there. I'm constantly following people on Twitter who are real experts and getting some really great ideas. One idea I got was to teach ChatGPT how to write in my voice. I was able to input communications and things that I had written, and then have it ultimately saved me a huge amount of time in terms of learning, or it learned how to write some things in my voice, and then I was able to modify and tweak it, and the message was good. Accuracy, Silas, is definitely a problem in many cases. As I mentioned, I was getting ready to deliver a talk, and I had a number of studies, and I was like, I wonder what other studies might be out there. And it literally told me a study that did not exist and never happened. So God forbid I had just taken that and said, oh, the Harvard Business Review has said this. That wasn't accurate. So we definitely need to challenge it, fact check it. But those are a few things that stand out. But I'm just going to say something else too on a personal level. I've used AI, I've used ChatGPT to help plan a family vacation. You know, I took one of my sons to Denver, and I put in there information about my son and what he was looking for, information about myself, and it gave me hotel recommendations, mountains to hike, different things to do. I took my family to Florida one time, did the same kind of thing. So there are a lot of different ways that this can be a time saver. But again, making sure that we're checking it and double checking it is a good thing.
The next question we have is from Victor. It's sort of related to where you see the sort of human artificial intelligence interaction, specifically as it relates to customer support. Victor's lamenting that it feels like he's speaking to a bot all the time. And can we ever imagine a time where AI takes care of everything? And then what does that mean for meaningful service relationships or sales relationships going forward? Where do we see that handoff sort of existing?
Yeah, it's funny, Chris and Victor. It might be a point where one day our bot is talking to their bot, and then just things happen. I don't know, but the question really goes to the deployment of AI, because I think one of the risks is that people will simply look at efficiencies and forget about the human component. How do people feel being on the receiving end of some of these things? And I know I've been in the same spot, and I don't like it sometimes. And it's frustrating, and it affects my relationship with that company and that brand. So I think we need to be very judicious in thinking about, we've got to think about that customer, we've got to think about that relationship. And it may be that the technology, at least as it's oriented, is not ready to do that. So, or it might be that there are certain levels of just routine kinds of things that we can have the AI handle, but then at higher levels of interaction, people need to be involved. So it could be maybe not either or, it could be both. But we definitely have to think about the customer experience and the impact of the brand by all the different ways that we might deploy this technology.
We have another question. It's from an anonymous attendee. You said to put things, you put things in that you had written. Are you worried about the random usage of your proprietary content?
Yeah, so let me be clear about that. I'm glad that question was asked. I'm never putting anything into ChatGPT that I would be afraid to be public. In other words, I'm not putting any IP. I'm not putting any Dale Carnegie content. I'm not putting anything in. What I'm talking about might be a communication that is more of a generic kind of a communication. I'm not putting in company data. I'm not putting in anything that I wouldn't want someone else. Because if we do, that does become part of AI's database, so to speak, unless we're using it in a protected internal system. So I'm glad that question clarified, or gave me the opportunity to clarify that, because I'm only using it for things that are more helpful to me. Sometimes I might, if I have a confidential communication, I might take the parts of that communication that are not confidential and put in a paragraph or two and say, can you help me? How would you write this if you wanted to write it in a friendly, conversational way, or something. So, but I would never put in anything that is IP or confidential.
We have a question from Megan that I really think is a good one. how can a staff member at an entry level or somebody who's in a less senior position effectively advocate for the adoption of AI to senior leadership within an organization?
Yeah, that's an important question. It's one I get that question often in different ways and in different kinds of environments. So how do I help somebody else? How do I influence? Ultimately, the question comes down to how do I influence someone, even someone who might not be inclined to agree with me? Someone says, this AI is all, whatever. So the first thing is, if we want someone to change, we need to be able to talk in terms of their interests. People are interested in the things that they are interested in. So what are their goals and their objectives? That's the starting point. So it might be a manager who says, and the conversation could be something like, you're aligning kind of what you're talking about to what their interests are. Hey, Chris, I certainly appreciate, working with you. And I know that you're always looking for ideas around how to improve things in the company. And frankly, I know that you care so deeply about efficiencies. If I had an idea that could help us save, I don't know, 20, 30% of our time, would that be something you'd want to hear about? Chris is going to say, of course, I'd like to hear about it. Then, it might be, well, I've seen this, and being able to talk a little bit about it, but we have to be able to talk about something that's important to them before they're really interested in hearing it. By the way, I think this could be a great opportunity for Megan or anyone who's got a good idea. I'll just say I love it when people come to me with ideas, and I think a lot of people in leadership do. And it could be something that says, wow, I mean, using the Alan Mulally example, someone came to him with an idea and he said, you lead this. It could be a career opportunity. So, and if someone's not inclined to do it, you do your best, and maybe you kind of come back and address it in a different way over time, or you just use it. And someone says, geez, Megan, how are you so much more effective? It seems like your output is higher than everybody else. Well, I got a secret for you,
Oh, by the way. Yeah. Um, one we've gotten a couple of questions that are around this and are actually the requests. Some of the folks are requesting that you put up the final slide that you had with the QR
sure.
code and where they can get some of those resources. So yeah, if you can, yeah, perfect. So for everyone here, you can go to dalecarnegie.com. There's a whole host of information. I know some of you were requesting where you can find more about the soft skills and the importance of soft skills and ways that you can build up those soft skills. So this is definitely where you can go to get that information. The final question that I think we have, in the last one that I'm seeing, is well, actually, there's two. So we'll take one from Marco, and then we have one final question. So the one from Marco is, in which industry do you believe AI is going to kind of have the most impact and be critical for the future going forward?
It's interesting because I think, and I'm not trying to punt on the question, I ultimately think that AI is going to have an impact in all industries, and the industries where it doesn't will be challenged. But it's really less a question of industry and more a question of companies and how companies leverage this. I mean, there are HR systems right now, so any industry can leverage these HR systems. There are finance systems. There are sales systems. There are marketing systems so that I can automate, beyond my customer journey, what I've been able to do and really connect with my customers in some cool ways. So that would be true whether it's in the training business, the auto business, a whole range of segments. So it may be less about the specific industry. I do think over time, and I read this study a lot, but when we start to see integration of AI with robotics, it's going to be an even different game. So manufacturing and production and other kinds of things will ultimately be impacted, but it depends on the timeline that we're talking about as well.
Yeah, it's really, even though it feels like it's almost saturated in the way that people are talking about it, it's really just the beginning. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out and how organizations can adapt and deal with it.
So true, Chris. Absolutely right.
So the final question that we have is really around how can you influence a culture that is becoming unbalanced as it relates to the weight that is being put on AI for the company's direction?
Well, I'm not sure I'm clear on the question. What I'm taking the question as that there is a overemphasis on AI in the organization, and that's creating maybe pressure on the people. That's kind of how I'm looking at it.
That's how I understand it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think that, if I'm the leader, my answer might be different than if I'm, say, an individual contributor. If I'm a leader, I want to be constantly monitoring how, because this has changed. This is a change management initiative. It could be similar to many other things that we're doing that involve change. So people may have fear, anxiety, frustration, a difficulty. Do they have the resources that they need to be successful? As a leader, I got to make sure that all those things are true, that I'm communicating, that I'm working with them, that I'm monitoring it, that maybe I'm pushing hard, but not too hard, that it's breaking people. So that's one element of it. If I'm an individual person, part of what I may want to do is make sure I'm communicating to my manager, my supervisor, to the organization, hey, I need some help here. I'm struggling. Or groups of people might say that. So that two-way communication is important because leaders might not know that it's a problem. So individuals should communicate, and leaders also need to communicate and also monitor.
So thank you everyone for providing such great questions. I think that this has been such a great dialogue around this new technology that everyone is sort of figuring out and learning a little bit as we go, and how it just keeps going faster and faster. So this has been really nice. And Joe, I'll just do you have any closing comments?
No, I just want to thank everyone for being here. I see this as a huge opportunity. And again, if I'm thinking about someone at whatever level of career that we're in, the mindset could be about, oh my gosh, this is my job and so forth. But you know what? What I'm going to focus on is in what ways can I leverage this to become better, to become more successful, to help my organization grow. It's the mindset that will ultimately drive the impact. So I'd encourage people to consider those kinds of things. And let's make things happen. We talk about taking command. Taking command is being intentional, making things happen. And there is a lot of opportunity right now.
Well, thank you, Joe, and thank you everyone for joining. As a reminder, a member of your local Dale Carnegie office is going to be reaching out with the recording of this session, as well as a whole host of resources to really get you, your organization prepared for this workplace transformation that is really upon us right now. We look forward to hearing from you soon, and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.